All right, it's the end of the session. This is O'Malley eating some Stewart's freeze-dried beef liver. And here in the forefront, I don't know if you can see it, but this is, here you go, buddy. I'll give you a little piece. This is Finn, and this is their roadmap to success. Now, basically, I think the main problem with these dogs is they were really lacking motivation. One of the main problems the Guardians want to help with is getting the dogs to come. They come for one of the Guardian most of the time. The other Guardian, they don't come unless they want to. And but they were able to get attention on demand. They didn't have a lot of rules and structure, and are probably a little under-exercised. And now Finn over here is the puppy. He's a Corona dog, so he didn't get an opportunity to get socialized, and so he likes to bark and has some confidence issues, but he really responded well to the stuff we were doing in the yard, which I'm going to cover first since we just covered that to make sure that we summarize that. So one of the games that we did was basically a pre-walk game. So basically, or a pre-recall game. We call it recall instead of come. So what you want to do is say, come, yes, give him a treat. Take a step to the side. So when you're saying it, you're saying, come, yes, and showing them that treat as you're walking away. And then they come to you because they want that treat. You say your marker word, and they come to you, and then you put the treat in their mouth. So, and then I want you, when you're doing this, one of the Guardians was doing this just walking backwards exclusively. So we walk backwards one step, then take a step to the side, go in chaotic directions, and I would do this for about 10 or 15 treats. So, maybe, actually, if you're gonna do it with both dogs at the same time, maybe 30 treats. So if only O'Malley comes, then I would say yes and give O'Malley the treat. If both of them came, I would say yes and nice and give both of them a treat. And now he seemed to pick up on it better than O'Malley did. Which is fine. I think that they'll get it pretty soon enough. But if it continues being an issue where Finn has it and O'Malley is struggling, maybe take O'Malley out, or take O'Malley out by himself and practice this without Finn there, and make sure you're using a high enough value treat. The other exercise we did was a traditional recall cue, where basically we want to start off with 3 or more people in a triangle shape about 7 feet apart. And what we want to do is before we call the dog, we're holding our hand out towards them with the treat in our hand right there. And then we're going to say and then we're going to say, come. And when the dog comes to us or looks at us, we lower our hand. The lower you go, the more it's for the dog. And so when the dog gets to where you want, you say nice, and then we give them a treat. After a while, we can use this hand motion to put the dog into a sit. Nice. So I kind of expect when I call a dog, it comes to me and then sits down, then I reward it. But if, because he was having difficulty with it, when you're practicing any of these, if he just comes to you at first, just say nice and give him that treat. Work on getting him to sit when he comes consistently to you every time you call him. So when you're doing this, you want to be about 7 feet apart. Each person has about 5 to, depending on how many people, you want to go through maybe about 30 to 50 treats for doing this. And have everybody about 7 feet apart. And when you get to the point where the dogs have a bounce in their step and they're running right to whoever calls them right away, then you take a couple steps backwards, make that triangle, whatever that shape, bigger and bigger until eventually the dogs are going from across the yard. Now, let's say that I called him and O'Malley came up, I said nice, gave him the treat, and then one of his Guardians over there called him, and he stayed here. It's like, David, I know you got more treats, just hook me up. I'm gonna cross my arms, freeze, look up at the ceiling, and freeze. I'm gonna become boring, I'm disengaging. I'm saying, there are no more treats for you here. You need to go to the person who's calling you. And that's why when you're playing this game, it's nice to have one person who's in charge, and they're saying mommy, daddy, Christian, or whoever it is, and that way one person is only calling the dog at a time. Now you can do it with one dog or both dogs simultaneously, but if both dogs come, say your marker word and give them both a treat. Now I talked about it in the video above, but make sure that you're also every time, like right there, nice. So the dog comes up to you on its own, say your marker word and pet it or give it a treat. I gave it a treat there. I would recommend when it does it for capturing, when it comes, just say nice and just pet it. Don't give it a treat for that. You can give it a treat, but don't worry about it. That should be the exception, not the rule. Okay. Now we also talked about exercise and stimulation. I think these dogs are both under exercise. So we went over playing fetch, playing tug of war, walking. And for the dogs right now, they walk on a path. And since he's a little bit reactive, I'd like to get him walking in a big open field. Grass is going to have a little bit more attraction in terms of distractions. Also, if somebody's coming towards you, you can move further away from them. And that's really when he's barking, what he's trying to do is get the thing to move away. And if we're on a path, we get to these choke points every once in a while where it's hard for the dog to escape or get too much distance. So we walk across the street, there's a big open field, and that way we can walk the dogs. And I'd like these dogs to practice, start doing some things independent of one another. They're very, very bonded to each other, and they have separation anxiety. So if they're separated, they just don't know how to process it. So if you go over there and walking them, but each one has a different handler and they're kind of taking their own path, they are practicing walking a little bit apart from each other. Eventually you get to the point where one of them's walking this side of the park, one of them's on that side of the park, and they're content because they're distracted. But they're also practicing being alone, which is a really important thing for dogs to do if they have separation anxiety. Now, we also talked about mental stimulation. One of the things, and I didn't go over it here, I didn't go over it in the session, so I'll go over it right here. So we call this cookie in the corner. So what it is I show him, would you like the word hunt, search, find it, or do you have a Latin term you want to use? It means to go find something. Okay. So what I do is I show him I have a treat, and I say find, and I throw it, and then he goes and gets it. I threw one treat that time. Now I have two treats. Find. Nice. Nice. And then when for you, come here, buddy. Find. Nice. Now we'll do 3 for you. Find. So what we're doing is we're assigning a command word that means go find and look for the treats. So what I do is I usually show the dog I have a treat and I say find as I throw 1 treat. When it comes back, I say find and throw 2 treats. Work my way up to the point where I'm throwing 5 or 6 treats. Don't do this in rooms where you don't want them to find stuff. So eventually what I could do is I can leave those treats lying around, and then when the dogs are away, and then when they come in, I point to the area and I say search, hunt, find it, whatever the command word is, and the dog's like, holy cow, there's a bunch of treats, and they start wandering around the room sniffing using their brain, trying to get those treats. Well, sniffing is very energy draining for dogs, so it's a great way to burn some excess energy. So you can also do the other things like we talked about is tug of war, sniff walks. I'd like to get a lick mat, and I like when we have Diego come by, we can use that lick mat, and that way the dogs are, especially Finn, is releasing some endorphins while he is licking on things. That makes him feel good. Now, there's also mental stimulation like training. Scent work, I guess, is mental stimulation as well. But the idea is to come up with a routine. They need exercise every couple of hours. So if we are feeding them out of a snuffle mat, and we'll talk about that in a sec, that gives them a walk. And so basically, that's equivalent to a walk. So, but right now the dogs are free fed. And so that kind of robs a lot of motivation. So I'd like the guardians to switch over to a structured feeding. It means I put the food down, it's time to eat. As soon as you walk away from the bowl, I pick up the bowl, I dump the empty remaining food out, and I put that bowl back down. And then you don't eat again until the next meal. I wouldn't be surprised if they go a day or 2 without eating. Don't withhold the food, and don't be like, oh, you didn't eat, it's a bad dog. No, if you don't want to eat, that's totally fine. But there's no food available in your bowl until the next meal. After a day or 2, they'll start eating, and don't cheat. Hunger is your ally. It's working with you. It's important for dogs to eat when we give them the food. If they're on medication, it's also helpful, especially in Finn's case, when they know what's coming next, there's some comfort and reassurance that comes from that. So feeding on a regular structured feeding schedule at the same time will help them feel more relaxed as opposed to them eating here, there, and wherever they want. Now, once you've gotten to them where it's about a week of when you put the food down, they come over and eat, then switch over to feeding them out of a snuffle mat. Snuffle mat makes them work for their food, so that almost is like getting an extra walk by just feeding them with one of those. Yes, that's kind of on the edge. He barked, but he did come to me, and so that's a little bit. He's a little protesting right now, and he might be a little bit tired. This has been a long session. I've been here for 3 hours, and that's a lot of time for him. He probably doesn't have a lot of visitors. Nice. That's that passive training we're going to talk about here in a sec. Okay, so exercise and stimulation is an important thing, but we also want to make sure that we're providing. You can also get kneecaps, bully sticks, which I might actually order some for the clients, tracheas, cow cheeks, cow ears, cod skins. Yes. And so if we give them those ingestible items, that's a great thing for them to sit down and chew on instead of barking at somebody else. We're helping them with a replacement behavior. Now, we also talked about, and being a Jack Russell, I'm sure he loves to play fetch, and so it's a great way to burn some excess energy. Hey, O'Malley / Murphy. Fetch. There we go. So, and if your dogs are, remember, you can use exercise to set them up for success. Before Diego comes by, make sure that the dogs get some exercise first. Now, this is the mini treat pouch from Pet Safe. I would recommend the mini, not the small. Get one of these, load it up with treats, and when Diego comes over, give it to Diego, but tell Diego to ignore Finn. So if Murphy comes over, he can pet him, tell him to sit, and give him a treat. We want to have Diego kind of ignore Finn. After a while, Finn's going to be like, well, what's Diego got going on? And then he starts coming over to Diego, and now he is Diego's in the driver's seat. And then when he gets to that point, Diego could throw a treat. If he won't come closer, Diego could throw a treat here. But the next couple of visits, I'd like Diego just to kind of be aloof. And then after a while, when Finn starts showing interest in him, then he can maybe offer a treat. He can drop a treat between him and Finn and get Finn to come to him. Well, let's say Finn is barking at him. Well, Diego could throw a treat over there and throw it away. When Diego's barking, he's trying to get Finn to more distance between him and Finn. Well, he doesn't realize he can move away. Finn can actually throw a treat behind him and have Diego, Diego can throw the treat, and Finn goes further away. That accomplishes the same thing. But remember, you can exercise him ahead of time to set him up for success. We also talked about rules and structure. A lot of us, we don't provide rules for our dogs because we think they're mean, and rules itself and enforcing rules is mean. And that can cause a lot of dogs to feel insecure because they feel like it's their responsibility to take care of us. And so having rules and regularity helps them feel a little bit more calm and comfortable. So some of the rules I suggest is not being in the kitchen when we're preparing food, not being within 7 feet of a human who's eating food, not letting the dogs near one another. Right now, if Finn has a bone and O'Malley walks up, Finn bares his teeth and O'Malley walks away. But if O'Malley has a bone and Finn walks up, a lot of times Finn can take the bone from him. Well, we don't want him to practice that either. We want to make sure both dogs feel secure. So if if O'Malley has a bone, we're not going to let Finn come near him. If we have to, we can take Finn on a walk. We can get in between them. But we'd really prefer to we just want to provide that safe environment. We don't want to punish or correct the dog for doing the wrong thing. We want to give him more of a replacement behavior, but also help O'Malley know that, hey, when I've got a bone, mom and dad are looking out and they're not going to let Finn come over and try to take my bone. And it's great that O'Malley is, yes, nice. And so great that O'Malley is comfortable with that as opposed to being aggressive about it, but that can change. And so we want to make sure we're taking care of that so he doesn't need to. We also went over the concept of premax. Less desirable behavior earns me a more desirable behavior. So if they want to go outside, tell them to sit. And one time, they have 2 seconds to sit. If they don't sit down nearby, look at your phone for 1 minute, then go back to the door and tell them to sit. If they don't sit this time, I sit down for 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 8 minutes, keep doubling the length of time. But as soon as they sit, open the door and let them out. But if only Finn sits and O'Malley doesn't sit, then I'm going to let Finn out and not let O'Malley out. I'm going to pay based on performance. I would do that letting him in the door as well. Now, the Guardians like to leave one of the doors open so the dogs can go in and out. I wouldn't do that at times when there's going to be a lot of people walking around or the neighbors are out. There's a neighbor over there that likes to cut wood. Those are times I'd close the door. And because we don't want the dog to practice that behavior. Now, you might want to even share your number with your neighbor. Just say, hey, we don't want the dogs bugging you when you're doing that. So next time you want to cut wood, let me know and we'll close our door. And that way the neighbor says, hey, they're being the neighbor will appreciate you looking out. I'm sure the neighbor doesn't want to have the dogs barking him as well. Sometimes they go over, they call the dog or they give him treats, and that reinforces. Remember, any attention is validating. So if they're barking, we just want to ignore it. But the better thing to do is try to find out why they're barking, or if you know they're going to bark at the neighbor, get them some exercise first. And when the neighbor comes out to cut the wood, maybe that we do some training or we go for a walk or we close the door so they can't go in and out. Like for the furniture, like right now, O'Malley likes to jump up in laps. So he just jumps up. Well, it'd be better if he comes over and he kind of puts his paws here, or he kind of nudging you. He's saying, I want on your lap. Tell him to sit one time. If he sits, then invite him up to reward him. If he doesn't sit, then he doesn't get the privilege of your lap. Nice. And after a while, that will motivate him to want to do it. Now, right there, what I did was something called nice. This is called capturing. I used to call it passive training. Nice. So basically, it's just waiting for the dog to do an action that you like, saying their marker word, and giving them some attention. We're not telling the dog to sit. We're waiting for them to do it on their own. And when they do it, then we're rewarding them for doing it. And so now when he starts barking, you can, let's see if he does it again. We can use something called a positive interrupter. You can see him right now. Yes. So if the dog's doing the wrong thing, if he barks and you go, and he looks at you and you're holding out a treat, he's going to run over towards you. And let's say he's barking people to the fence. I can go like that and throw treats far away. And now I've redirected him to going further away from whatever it was. He's happy to get the treats and we redirected him. Now, if he barks and we give him a treat, then that's rewarding him for barking. So when he barks, we make that positive interrupter sound, which would either be a kiss, like, or you can say, beep, 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 beep. And to hold out that treat, they come over to you, you give them the treat, and then you redirect them towards doing something else that increases distance between them and whatever they're reacting to. Let me see. We also went over. We also went over petting with a purpose. Petting with a purpose is if you want to pet your dog or your dog is demanding attention from you, you tell the dog to sit. If it's already sitting here, tell it to sit over here or here or lay down. It has to do something to change its state. If it does, within 2 seconds of the only time you ask for it, then you mark and pet them. And if they don't do it, you play hard to get. It works great for dog training just as it does for dating. And after a while, the dog will come start sitting in front of you to prepay for the attention. When it does, make sure you pet it. Make sure you use the watchword of paycheck. If you suspect someone's petting without a purpose, they stop petting. Tell the dog to sit. If it sits, then they pet. Say the marker word and pet. If it doesn't sit, then they actually say, well, I asked them to sit, and you know, when you open the door, you stood up, and I continued petting. But thank you, I do forget to pet without a purpose. I use the watchword of celebrate for capturing or passive training. So if I'm right here and somebody says celebrate, I just say my marker word, yes, or nice, and I start petting the dog as soon as I can. It means that the dog did something I missed. So you should do that for comes, sits, laying down, eye contact, dropping the ball, eating their food, pooping, whatever. Well, not for pooping, but anytime they do stuff on your own, then you're going to tell them to do something. They're very good. Now, right there, the guardian, he just came over to one of the guardians. He wants to play fetch. And he dropped the ball. The guardian went to pick it up, and he said, sit, and the dog sat, and he reached over to pet the dog. The dog got up because O'Malley didn't want to get petted. He wanted you to throw the ball. Throwing the ball could be a reward as well. So do the same thing. Tell him, drop. He drops it. Then I pick it up. Tell him to sit. As soon as he sits, then throw the ball. Make that the reward. Let me see. Petting with a purpose and passive training. Passive training is if the dog does something you like, you're going to give him your attention. Remember, good attention is bad attention. Right there. Same thing. So if I pet him for sits and comes and downs, he's going to do those things. If he barks or does something I want, I'm going to, if anything, use the positive interrupter, but I'm just going to ignore or try to increase the distance. Petting with a purpose is if I want to pet the dog or the dog wants me to pet it, I'm going to tell it to sit or lay down, or the dog has to prepay by sitting or laying down as a way of asking for my attention. Let me see. I can't remember. We had to do this in two pieces. I'm going to meld these together. So if it got cut off, make sure you are transitioning from a free feeding situation to a structured feeding. So dump the food out of the bowl, put the empty bowl back down, and don't feed until the next meal. After a week of that, go back to the supplement. I think I already went over that in this version of it, but it's confusing for me when I do two of the same things right in a row. Let me see. What else? If you have questions on any of this stuff, let me know. Hopefully we're going to have Claire come back and work on the either the relaxation protocol or the engage-disengage game to help Finn with his barking problem with other people. But remember to do that paper on the door, the bottom part of the door, and any windows that they can see out. And then after about 2 months of that, and they stop, the barking is diminished, then you can start every week cutting an inch of it off, and gradually it dissipates. But we've established good foundational behavior first. Also, teaching them new tricks and commands is a great way to redirect their attention, boost their confidence, and increase their respect for us as an authority figure. So one of the guardians, the one that they don't listen to as much, they might want to get in a habit of doing some basic training. I'm going to teach you roll over. And you want to go outside, roll over. You want me to pet you, roll over. You want on the bed, roll over. You want to eat, roll over. But at the end of the week, you just look at the dog and it rolls over. And then next week, maybe you teach it to play dead. Next week, you teach it to sit pretty. Next week, you teach it to go to the fridge and open and grab a beer and bring it to you. Whatever it is. But the idea is if you teach them new tricks and commands, the dogs have a little bit more respect for us. We have different ways to distract them. And it's just a nice way to boost their self-esteem as well. Confident dogs brush things off. Insecure dogs kind of freak out. Now, if you have any questions on the stuff we went over or anything else, please text me. If I don't hear from you, I assume everything's going great. Can we come over here and do a sign-off? Come here. Come here. Well, this is Finn. Sit. He's like, I'm not going to sit. I'm going to do circle. Yes. And that circle, I would also reward that through celebrate. If he does a circle, yes. Go ahead and just pet him. Or say your marker word when he completes a circle, and then give it, and then reward it. And after a while, if you know he's going to do it, you can actually lure a dog. Come here, buddy. You like going this way, don't you? Yes, that can be a simple little cue. Just something as simple as teaching a dog to do a circle or do a lap around you. There you go, buddy. All right, Mr. Murphy, I was calling him. His name is O'Malley. Sit. This is O'Malley. This is Finn. This is their roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.